were talking about things that surprised or disappointed or stood out for in 2024. Uh, Kyle, what stood out for you?
Yeah, in the last segment, Phil talked a little bit about dysfunction, and I think one of the interesting things we can take from 2024 is a serious look at that dysfunction. On both the House and Senate side, we had serious consideration of fiscal commission proposals. Those conversations made it a long way, and I think that engaged the national conversation in a way that maybe it hasn't been in the past couple of years. And even looking at President-elect Trump's transition team, the Department of Government Efficiency, whether skeptical of it or not, whether you are in that case, at least is bringing it to the conversation. People are trying to engage seriously with the topic of deficit and debt reduction. And I think that's one of the big things that we can take away from 2024. And to add on to that, the young person perspective, one of the demographic shifts that I think is notable in the election is that young people did swing for the Trump-Vance ticket. There are plenty of demographic shifts, and you can't say for what reason any specific one was, but it does show that young people have power and can influence the national conversation and perhaps, the national results of deficit and debt reduction.
Talk about that a little bit, just the generational shift in terms of media communications.
Yeah, and I think it also goes back to another thing Phil said about education. I think there is just a mass amount of information that people are able to receive, whether it be true or informed or not, that everyone is consuming, especially my generation and young people. And these are huge avenues for people who might have malintent or a misunderstanding of the situation to profess whatever views they're thinking about. But putting it in the view of debt and deficit reduction, I think it is a way that we can access people and informing them about the issue. Whether it's podcasts or social media posts, people are listening to that, at least in my generation, far more than whatever legacy media is saying. People have lack of trust in institutions. They would rather trust, whatever individual they have on their phone screen at the moment. I think we need to engage that kind of new type of media that's more individualized and the things that people my age are watching, consuming, and really trusting as a source of information.
Do you get any sense for what messages work? I mean, it's one thing to find the proper communication channels, but what should be communicated through those channels?
I think the thing that resonates the most is what's going to impact people's, economic standing, their families, their livelihoods. And I think we've always known that. But now more than ever, when you have Social Security becoming insolvent, within the next decade, that's in the time frame. So focusing on issues like that, where people might feel tangibly worried about these things, whether that be Social Security, Medicare, even though that may not affect my generation for a couple decades, I think it's still something people are considering. When you talk about interest rates, I think that's something people are interested in as well as, we enter the time of our lives where we're really getting engaged in our personal finances and maybe starting businesses. So I think it's a super important message to show the direct economic effects of a rising debt and deficit.